Tonight, President of the National House of Chiefs, Togbe Afede, wades into a Japa royalty saga, criticizing the deal for its secrecy and questioning why government set up the firm in a tax haven.
That show disapproval of this transaction. Tax havens typically serve two purposes: helping you to avoid tax or ensure secrecy. I don't see why a national transaction should be shrouded in secrecy in the first.
We have the latest as it emerges that the minority members of parliament raised no objection to the parent law that made it possible for a Japa to be set up in any jurisdiction.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Gassem Cement, the nation build, and Vodafone. The future is exciting ready. He had been reported to have endorsed the deal, but tonight the president of the National House of Chiefs, Togbe Afede, is fighting back, launching his own offensive against the controversial Japa royalties deals. Togbe Afede says there is no way the House of Chiefs will legitimize the deal. He criticized government's decision to set up the special purpose vehicle in a tax haven.
That show disapproval of this transaction. Tax havens typically serve two purposes: helping you to avoid tax or ensure secrecy. I don't see why a national transaction should be shrouded in secrecy in the first place. And if we are trying to avoid tax or minimize tax, whom are we denying tax payment to? The corporation is incorporated in Ghana. Tax will accrue to Ghana, which will be paid by this company that is owned supposedly majority by Ghana. So I do not see why we should be doing that in the first place.
Now, he also reacts to the reports that he had endorsed this particular deal, the controversial Japa royalties deal. He says, in fact, tonight, that he had filed a formal complaint, a report with the police because of allegations that the letterhead of the National House of Chiefs had been forged and attributions falsely made to him, suggesting that he endorsed this Japa deal.
It was titled House of Chiefs Condemn Ethnocentric Comments shared by John Dramani Mahama. Again, most of these publications came with my name, but this one went further to forge the letterhead of the National House of Chiefs. By the time it was dropped by Ghana Web, it had attracted almost 150 comments. This is extremely mischievous and needs to be condemned without any reservation and in no uncertain terms. I, in particular, am very much hurt by the attempt to use my name to grant legitimacy to a transaction that has been very widely condemned for its secrecy and for the fact that the company involved, a Japa, was incorporated in a tax haven. I do not see why desperation will lead anybody who is associated with that transaction to want to use the name of innocent Togbe Afede the 14th. I've never commented on these kind of transactions, and I've decided not to comment for good reason. More important for me is the attempt to use my name and the National House of Chiefs to grant legitimacy to this transaction. The National House of Chiefs will issue a statement very shortly to deny that this ever emanated from the House. Meanwhile, we have lodged a report with the police so that the culprits who are perpetrating this can be traced. This is very important, in the run-up to the December 7 elections. People will attempt to use social media to spread all kinds of falsehood. It's indeed very dangerous and should be condemned by all well-meaning Ghanaians. It's not about whether you're NDC or NPP. Democracy must be built on solid foundations of truth. Extremely important.
So that is the president of the National House of Chiefs there, putting out his side of the story on the wake of the reports that he had endorsed it. He goes ahead, as you heard him there, criticize the deal in itself and the setting up of a Japa in a tax haven. There are reports, I'm sure you've seen also online today, that government may have suspended the Japa deal. We'll get to the Deputy Information Minister shortly on that. But also today, as you know, this controversy keeps raging on. The flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama, who has been campaigning in the Upper West region, says the NDC will use every legal means possible to frustrate government on the matter.
They should desist immediately from signing that Japa deal. We are going to oppose it. We will oppose the agreement and will do everything legitimately in our power to frustrate that agreement in the interest of the people of Ghana. A small group of people cannot go and write an agreement and monetize our gold royalties for the next 15 years and even in perpetuity without our consent.
Now, the former president also rejected assertions that an NDC government in the past attempted to monetize Ghana's royalties in a similar manner.
And recently, they went and took something from Parliament in 2011, Ghana Gold, and said, oh, but you two were trying to monetize the gold. The difference is that the proposed Ghana Gold Company was 100% owned by the government and people of Ghana. Not Ejapa. Ejapa Ghana owns only 51%. 41% is held by other people we don't know.
On the telephone line with me is Deputy Information Minister Pius Hajide. Mr. Hajide, I'm grateful that you could join me here on Top Story. Clarify for me, in the wake of the engagement with the CSOs yesterday, has government taken the decision to suspend the deal, as has been reported?
Well, thank you, you and various listeners. Yes, as you rightly said, government through the Ministry of Finance yesterday engaged with civil society players and other stakeholders over its decision to activate relevant portions of the Minerals Income Investment Fund Act 2018 as amended. We did these engagements because of government's desire to provide clarity and information so as to disabuse the minds of anybody who may have been led into suspecting wrongdoing. And we also wanted to carry the country along with us as we embark on this very exciting and novel journey of adding value to our natural resources, all in keeping with the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. We are happy to continue to engage with all manner of persons, individuals and institutions that may so desire. But in the meantime, even as we are prepared to engage, we shall continue to work in the best interest of the Ghanaian people. We shall use our nation's resources to leverage our assets for tomorrow. And so we continue to keep our eyes on the ball, and let's be reassured that any income from the Ejapa Mineral Royalty Limited arrangement will be used, like we have said, in the 4 areas of health, education, road infrastructure, and housing. So, Evans, as I speak to you, I can assure you that I do not have any brief that government has suspended or intends to suspend the Ejapa Mineral Royalty Limited arrangement.
So categorically, it's still in place and government is going ahead.
If you may repeat, sir?
Sorry, so categorically, it is still in place and government is going ahead.
Evans, that's...
Sorry, Mr. Powers, I lost you briefly.
Yes, that's correct.
You said that's correct?
That's very correct.
Okay. Let me ask you then. I mean, today, the opposition to this appears to be growing. We're now hearing from the president of the National House of Chiefs. We understand that in this meeting, at least from what civil society told us yesterday after the meeting, that the finance minister agreed to consult broadly, including meeting the chiefs. Already, the president of the National House of Chiefs is criticizing the deal, as you've heard Togba Fede say, that it is simply a deal that he cannot legitimize because of the secrecy. That's the word he used. And he questions why government will even set it up in the taxi in the first place. That clearly gives you a sense of where the chiefs stand on this particular matter. I mean, they are the custodians, as we say, of these minerals that we are mortgaging.
Well, coincidentally, I also happened to have visited the Porter yesterday, and so I also indicated that personally I was engaged with several chiefs who also have sought some clarity, and upon the clarity being offered to them, I also are of the view that it is a good thing to, as it were, leverage on our natural resources and prepare ourselves for the future. And so I believe that in this matter, the good chief, and with all due respect to him, I hear him loud and clear, but I think that he is representing himself on this matter. I say that because of what you said, that the chiefs, and I think that we have to put it in context. I think that, like I said in my opening commentary, we are prepared to engage all and sundry, including our revered, respected chiefs, in the view that whatever misinformation and misconception they may carry, we can assist them to clear it. And so that consultation and that engagement is ongoing. We will be prepared to offer better and further particulars and clarification should anybody desire to engage with us. But you see, it will be wrong for one to proceed that because one may not have the clarity at this time or may lack a certain understanding, then the person is right and that the arrangement is wrong. If you may, I will just again address the matter of the secrecy now and together with the former president, because in the voice that I heard you play, he also makes similar claims. And I am surprised that anybody at the high level of a former president, presidential candidate, would describe an arrangement that was vigorously interrogated on the floor of the House. And if I may just remind you and our cherished listeners, you recall the famous little joke that my boss, the information minister, passed in Parliament when he referred to his colleague, the Honourable Member of Parliament from Yape Kostoko, as Papano. This happened during the very intense and vigorous interrogation of this matter. So how somebody comes around to describe something that was vigorously interrogated on the floor of Parliament and shrouded in secrecy beats my imagination. Number two, the claim is made that somebody wants to use somebody's name or somebody wants to steal credibility and to legitimize these arrangements.
I mean, this is the consensus of Toby Afede you're speaking to.
Yeah, but
okay.
The legitimacy of these arrangements does not derive from the number of people that support it. The legitimacy derives from the fact that this was arrangement that was sanctioned and ratified by the Parliament. And so that settles the matter of the legitimacy of the and so I think that it oversteps to assume that somebody requires a further validation of parliamentary something that through the processes and I think that Mr. Mahama who makes the claim. Evans, may I sit and deal with that matter?
I'll come to Mr. Mahama shortly, but I want you to stay with me briefly because I need to fix something with your line. It keeps breaking. But stay with me. We're going to rectify that. But we also joined right now. Pius will stay with me. We also joined on the telephone line right now by Nana Soglo Alo. He is the president of the Volta Regional House of Chiefs. As you heard the Deputy Information Minister suggest, the pronouncement by Toby Afede is his personal view. To what extent that's the assertions he's made represent the view of the House of Chiefs. Remember that the Nana Soglo Alo is the Volta Regional President of the House of Chiefs and is a member of the National House of Chiefs as well. Thank you very much, Nana, for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much as well.
I'm grateful that you could join me. I mean, so tell me, this Ijapa royalties deal, we've heard from the president of the House of Chiefs. You're a member of the National House of Chiefs. Has the House of Chiefs, do you have a position on this? And I'm pretty sure you've heard the pronouncement of Togbe. Is it something that the entire House backs?
Well, actually, this issue was never discussed at the National House of Chiefs. Because our last meeting of the National Chiefs was to discuss about our forthcoming elections, the regional houses of chiefs and the national house of chiefs elections. So this issue of a Japa deal never came up.
So the Japa royalties deal never came up at the national house of chiefs?
It never came out of the national house of chiefs, and I don't think it ever came up of any of the regional houses of chiefs either. So I was pleasantly surprised when I received on our platform a so-called a statement made by Togbe Afede stating that the house were not, and all that. So we thought, well, as I said, I was pleasantly surprised when the statement came out.
Let me clarify this. Togbe Afede himself said that there was an initial statement that created the impression that he and the House had endorsed the deal. That is what he came out to correct. And in correcting it, he said there's no way that the name of the House will legitimize this deal because of this secrecy. And it goes on to criticize government decision to set up in a haven. Which one are you referring to? Is it the statement that alleges that you endorsed all his criticism?
There was no initial statement. The only statement that we saw, or I saw, was a statement dated the 1st of September, which is attributed to Togbe Afede.
Which said what exactly?
The statement so claimed to be made by Togbe Afede, dated the 1st of September, with regard to the National House of Chiefs, which is stated on the National House of Chiefs letterhead. That is the only statement I've seen.
Yeah, he says that statement and the details of that statement did not come from him because it suggests that
it didn't come from Togbe, and it didn't come from the National House of Chiefs either.
True, that's his point. That statement suggests that he had endorsed the deal, and he said there's no way the House will do that because this is
true.
Exactly. So that's his point. So you agree with him that you didn't issue a statement to endorse the deal?
No, there was no such statement was ever issued by the National House of Chiefs or the Volta Regional House of Chiefs.
Now that's the second leg now. Then in rebutting that statement, they've reported this now to the police because it says the statement was a forgery. It's reported to the police. In rebutting that statement, he goes ahead to criticize the Ijapa deal and says that, of course, it criticizes it for being secretive. In fact, I want you to listen to him. I mean, don't take my word for it. Listen to Togbe Afede raise issues with the Ijapa deal. Stay with me.
That show disapproval of this transaction. Tax havens typically serve two purposes: helping you to avoid tax or ensure secrecy. I don't see why a national transaction should be shrouded in secrecy in the first place. And if we are trying to avoid tax or minimize tax, whom are we denying tax payment to? The corporation is incorporated in Ghana. Tax will accrue to Ghana, which will be paid by this company that is owned supposedly majority by Ghana. So I do not see why we should be doing that in the first place.
As a member of the National House of Chiefs and the Regional House of Chiefs President of Seoul, what do you make of that? Is it a position that you share?
Well, see, Togbe Afede is an expert when it comes to such things because that is his line of business. Togbe runs the SAS, which we all know. He has been with these issues for so many years, which we all know. He's worked with the stock exchange. So that's his area of business. So what he's saying is his personal knowledge of what goes on, particularly when it comes to creating or setting up offshore companies. Offshore companies are mainly set up for two reasons, as Togbe said, for secrecy and for avoidance of tax. And that should be well known to most people who are involved in businesses and such issues.
Is that to suggest that you agree with him when he says that
yes, I do.
The Japa deal then, because of the way it's being set up?
Not a Japa deal. What I'm trying to say is that if the deal is an offshore deal or a company set up in an offshore, that's the reason behind it. With anything that is set up offshore, particularly, and we have so many offshore companies like Isle of Man, Virgin Islands, and so many other areas. And the purpose of setting up an offshore deal is for secrecy and also for avoidance of tax.
The Ejapa Royalties Company, the fact is it's set up in a tax haven in Jersey. That's a fact.
A tax haven means avoidance of tax.
So as a chief, and I know all of you are the custodians of the minerals that we have in our soil. Yeah. Is this something you support or you do not support? What's your position?
The Ejapa deal?
Yes.
Actually, to be honest with you, I don't know much about the Ejapa deal and have not actually been following the Ejapa deal because I haven't actually honestly been following the Ejapa deal until this issue came up when Tobis's letter, or the so-called letter, came up.
We've heard that the government intends to now consult the chiefs, including yourselves. Of course, you'll be a prominent part of this going forward. You are open to hear what government had to say about this and form an opinion.
But why not? Because we always work with the government. We'll be sympathetic to whatever the government brings up, if it's understandable and if it's of benefit to the Ghanaians.
Learning tonight that because you say you haven't followed, that the Ejapa Royalties Company, which is become so controversial, has been set up in a tax haven. What do you make of that? What do you make of that as a president of the Regional House of Chiefs in the Volta region?
Actually, this is not an issue affecting chiefs, but it's affecting all of us as a nation. So obviously, chiefs are members of the part of the nation. So if it's been thoroughly discussed and thoroughly been through and all that, but our concern, our beef, or particularly my concern, my beef, is the fact that it's been set offshore. And what we says, and which we all agree, why should it be offshore? That's all. So I've also heard what the Honorable Minister Pius Fajibe says. Mm-hmm. And from what he says, if the issue was discussed on the floor, and happy to meet with the House of Chiefs, including me, we'll be happy to meet with them and a further explanation be thrown on this. And I'm sure more light will be thrown on this, and we will ask questions when the government meets the House.
Grateful that you could join me. Nana Soglo Alo is the Volta Regional President of the House of Chiefs. He's, of course, a member of the National House of Chiefs there. So you see the challenge that the civil society guys have raised. He is, of course, one of the key individuals that we had from yesterday's meeting. The government intends to consult the chiefs across the country as custodians of the minerals in the soil. I still have with me the Deputy Information Minister on the line. Mr. Pius Fajibe, so that's some clarity there as to whether or not the views expressed is talking about FEDES alone or the House of Chiefs. I think it's very clear now. And the Togba FEDES didn't claim to be speaking for the House of Chiefs. He was speaking, of course, as a president, but he expressed views that the president of the Regional House of Chiefs agrees. Does that offer you clarity? And clarify for me also, after yesterday's meeting, the intention to consult broadly, including the chiefs who are custodians?
Well, Evan, two things are clear from that I had. Initially, the impression was...
forgive me, Mr. Hajide. I'm going to call you back on a clearer line. Your line isn't great. We'll try and fix that so we could hear you on the other line. I'm grateful. We'll get him back on the telephone line shortly, so we could get him to speak to the issues that had come up. Stay with me. When we return from this quick break, we would hear from Pius, but also go to Parliament. I mean, a challenge was thrown the last time by Kaisel Atufosing on the issue of what the minority members did when the original law was being considered that gave the powers to government to set up the Ejapa Royalties Company in any jurisdiction. This was a challenge.
But let me tell you something. Oh, really? No, but that question is a fundamental point. You see, the fundamental point is that the NDC minority, and Evans, I'm putting my credibility on the line. Get a copy of the Hansard. Tomorrow, you'll be on Top Show. Top Show, yes. Read it. Call me if I'm wrong. Let viewers. You propose an amendment to this clause. This very clause. And it was defeated.
So we've been digging. We've secured the Hansard. We've read through it. What did we find? Shortly on Top Story. Do we have Mr. Pius Fajibe on the line? Okay, we don't have him yet. Stay with me. You're on Top Story. Soon, Pius Fajibe will also go to Parliament and tell you what we found.